Sometimes when I'm working with a new client, what they most want help with is making decisions for their families. And by that, what they often mean is they want me to tell them what to do. So that's what we're going to talk about this week. And if you have ever wanted someone to give you a magic wand and tell you how to make the right decision, this episode's for you.
Welcome to Parenting Successful Teens, the podcast that cuts through the overwhelm and stress of this phase and offers parents simple, practical, cognitive, science-based strategies for keeping their teens on track. Join master coach and real-life mom, Allie Irwin, to talk about real teens, real problems, and the skills it takes to raise successful adults.
When I first hired my very first life coach, and honestly, probably my second one and my third one, I also wanted someone to tell me what to do. I felt like, if I could just make the right decisions, like things were going well, and that's why I hired a life coach. And I thought that life coach, like the way she was going to help me make things better was that she would tell me what decision was the right one for me to make. And the right decision, like I didn't know it at the time, but the right decision in my mind was like this mystical, I had created that word to mean like this mystical unicorn of a decision that I would like, my kids would like, or at least wouldn't complain about, didn't cost too much or take too much time. And it would also yield the highest long-term benefit. So I wanted the decision to be really good right now, but I also wanted it to be really good in the long term. I wanted to make sure I would look back and not regret that decision. And I call it unicorn because those decisions don't exist. That is why I could not make them on my own, and my coach couldn't make them for me, because those decisions, I teach my clients to call them unicorn decisions because they are mystical decision creatures that do not exist. But even more so than that was the quantity of relatively small decisions that felt like big decisions just because of all the competing needs that were going on. An example of that is making the decision about when we were going to come back from gymnastics nationals the year that my daughter qualified. And we all went as a family, and the grandparents met us, and she had all this team bonding time, and there were all these team required times, and my son was not that interested in any of it. He wanted to be home with his friends and doing his things. And so I was trying to decide how she could get the maximum time for this amazing gymnastics experience and build lifelong memories and make the grandparents happy, but yet it didn't require too many extra nights in the hotel, both for cost reasons and so that I could get my son home on time for his practice, which eventually ended up getting basically canceled, which I knew it was going to, but I couldn't convince him it was going to get canceled. And even me trying to convince him it was going to get canceled meant that I didn't care about him or care about his activities. And long term, that is a relatively insignificant decision, but the pressure from trying to make decisions like that and meet everyone's competing needs, that pressure multiplied out by the number of decisions that we moms are required to make in a week, that adds up. And then each decision on its own, we know aren't that important, but then taken together, we almost get decision paralysis or decision exhaustion just from trying to make all of these decisions and trying to make them through the filter of the competing needs and wants of everyone in our family and our friends and our extended family and our budget and our time and all those things. So it makes sense that when moms come to me, they just want me to tell them what to do. And what I realized this week, I was talking to a new client and I could feel how much she wanted me to decide for her. What I realized this week is I've never explicitly talked about why the actual decision that you make in these situations is the least important part. And I'm hoping by talking about that, I'll help reduce some of that pressure that you feel and give you a framework that will also make the decisions flow easier. So we'll both reduce the pressure on the individual decisions, and we'll also build a really firm, strong foundation that will help make the decisions themselves flow more easily. And you'll be committing to making the decision that you make the right one rather than making the right decision. Okay, can you see the difference there? You're going to decide that the decision you make using these 3 foundation pieces is the right one, and then you're going to commit to that rather than staying in these indecision loops, trying to make the right decision that will give you the feeling of confidence in the decision. Okay, we're going to build the confidence ahead of time in the decision. And you think it's going to make you more inflexible, but it doesn't. It actually makes it easier to be flexible or easier to switch on the fly if you end up the decision you make is wrong. In contrast, if you are stuck in the indecision loop, you pour so much time and energy into the decision itself that then if it goes sideways, you don't have anything left, you don't have any gas left in the tank to adjust. So this works because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much, using my nationals example, whether we came back on Tuesday or Wednesday. If there was a clear-cut answer, then I wouldn't be stuck in a decision loop. Okay, this process isn't for things where there's an easy, clear-cut decision. It's those kind of murky competing priorities where there is no clear-cut decision. Okay, this process is for that. And the 3 pieces are, you need to have a clear set of priorities. You need to not talk to yourself like a jerk or let anyone else talk to you like a jerk. And you need to be responsible for your own happiness. So, piece 1, have clear family priorities. In a situation where there are a lot of competing priorities, knowing what the most important thing, knowing what that is really clarifies most decisions. So for this, I'm going to use a different example. I'm thinking of over Labor Day, my daughter and I were going to meet halfway between where she goes to school and where I live for Labor Day weekend and hike. And I got really twisted up in the decision about where to meet. There were some super cool trails, but they were farther away and we'd have to spend the night somewhere to make it worthwhile. And that could be super cool, but maybe she didn't want to spend that much time. Or maybe I could drive down and meet her where she is, and that, would save me the money because I'd be staying at her place. But then that shifted which trails we were going to be at. Or we could be someplace closer to me, or we could do a day hike. I mean, honestly, it just went on. And I had a dozen tabs open trying to decide what to propose to her. And whenever I get that feeling for me, so decision loop for me is this buzzy, tight feeling, kind of in my stomach, and my shoulders hunch up around my ears, and I get this buzzy sort of indecisive feeling in my head. That is a sign to me that I do not have clear priorities for the situation. So it's as simple as asking yourself, what is the highest goal here? Or what's my priority in this? That really helps me zone in on what in the business world they would call the key deliverable. Okay, what's the most important thing in this situation? And in order to get that, you might have to list out your priorities. Sometimes you're writing them down, even on just a piece of scrap paper. You're not going to save this. Just grab a receipt off your desk or a piece of scrap paper and write down all the different priorities that are competing in your head that are making this decision so hard. So in this hike, the key priority was literally just time together. all of my options met time together. And so just realizing that every option would work, Like, it took the temperature down of making the right decision immensely. Like, right off the bat, I felt immediate relief because every decision met the most important criteria. So then I had to decide between beauty of hike and length of drive and potential crowdedness. But even picking between those three, I knew that any decision that I made, as long as we had time together and we were hiking outside, like, they were all beautiful. And so my most important criteria was met. And I want you to really keep this in mind. As I said, the next level of decision criteria, like, it was a little harder to decide between beauty of hike and length of drive. Length of drive won out. Beauty of hike, because they're all beautiful hikes. But I want you to keep this in mind, because so often we think there's some perfect decision out there where we can optimize every factor. But 9 times out of 10, like, if there was that option, you would have already thought about it. And dumping more and more and more time and energy into trying to optimize every factor, like, actually sucks all the fun out of the activity. Or it creates so much unnecessary pressure. Like I said, you end up in this sort of inflexible mindset. So if you can just pick your key priorities for your family in this situation, just doing that step alone will take down the pressure immensely. So, foundation piece 2, have your own back, or don't talk to yourself like a jerk, or let anyone else talk to you like a jerk. This is super important because oftentimes the reason you're having trouble deciding is because you are going to talk to yourself like a jerk, or you're going to let someone else talk to you like a jerk. Okay, we get hooked in to making the right decision, and by right, we mean the one where nobody is mad at me. And oftentimes, especially if you have multiple kids, like, that's just not an option. If we left on Wednesday, my son was going to be mad. And if we left on Tuesday, my daughter was going to be mad. And please, nobody be mad at me energy. Like, kids can smell that energy and they use it to get what they want. So this leads me directly into foundation piece 3, is you have to be responsible for your own happiness. As parents, and especially as women, we are taught that other people's needs and feelings are more important than our own. Okay, this is neatly summarized in that BS quote that you hear all the time. You're only as happy as your least happy child. Like, that is terrible advice because it puts your kids' feelings in the driver's seat of all of your family decisions. Okay? We do not want to make our teenagers that can barely manage their own emotions responsible for our happiness. Okay? That's not enough heed is paid to the way we socialize moms to be people pleasers, which just does not work. And this is part of what happened to me with the decision, the gymnastics decision from the first part of the podcast. Like, that happened before I was a coach and before I knew and practiced these tools. I tried to make everyone happy, which basically left everyone unhappy, and I ended up with a giant speeding ticket because I was trying to squeeze the part of the decision that nobody liked, which was the travel time. So if I had just been okay with people being mad at me, if I had been responsible for my own happiness and then required civility, didn't let anyone talk to me like a jerk, I would have been a much safer driver. I think that I would have saved myself some serious cash. That was big ticket. And, I honestly think that people would have been happier. Like, if I had not tried to make people happy. So you definitely do not want to outsource your emotional life to your children. Okay, it's too much responsibility for them. And Honestly, it teaches them to outsource their happiness to others, and it robs them of the opportunity to benefit from your emotional maturity and your wisdom. Okay, we want to normalize that it's okay that they're going to make decisions that not everybody likes. All of these foundational pieces require practice and support. They are not what is practiced in most families, and it's not what society has socialized us to do. Okay, women are socialized to put other people's needs above their own. And that sets up this false dichotomy where it's you get to be happy or I do. And what I'm suggesting is that when you make a decision based on your priorities and you model tying decisions to priorities and choose to have your own back and choose to manage your own happiness, that is a more reliable form of happiness than perfect decisions. It makes you more intellectually flexible to see great options because it takes the pressure off the decision itself. Because even if things go sideways, you'll have your own back, right? Like you'll have made the decision for good reasons that you like. You'll have made it based on things that matter to you. And that's what you want for yourself. And that habit of thought is what you want to teach your kids. They have thousands of decisions ahead of them. And this foundation will serve them well. Like just imagine them off in their adult lives and something's happening with their college roommate and you want them to be able to fall back on their priorities and require kind communication from themselves and from other people. And you don't want them, like their happiness to be contingent on someone else's happiness. So those foundational pieces deliver that. So 2 things to wrap this up. I have a great PDF that you should all go grab that's got all of this broken down, and you can find it at Allie@AllieIrwin.com. There are buttons all over the website saying something like regret-proof decisions. Okay, that's a nice little summary of what we talked about today. And the second thing is these habits are super simple, but they are not easy. If you have years or decades of practicing talking smack to yourself, you may need some help changing that habit. Oftentimes that voice in your head about what a good mom does or how a good mom makes decisions or puts everybody first just sounds like the truth to us, so we don't even hear it. We don't hear it as the optional nonsense it is. So if you'd like to explore what having support could feel like, now is the perfect time. You can book a free exploration call with me to talk about what working together would be like. It's not weird to hire a coach to help you feel better about parenting your teens. It's actually brilliant because at this age, you have a whole new slew of challenges. And many of the supports that you had when your kids were younger, like play groups and toddler time, those supports are gone. Plus, everything feels really high stakes right now. And your kids don't want you sharing their stuff with their friends' moms. So you can schedule your call to tell me the stuff and enjoy the confidentiality of a coaching relationship as a way to explore all the things that you feel uncomfortable talking to your sister-in-law about or your kids, your friends' kids' moms. Friends, moms, kids, you know what I mean. So you can schedule a call with the link in the show notes or on my website, and we'll talk about how to get your strong foundation set up so that you can enjoy these years, confident that you're doing right by your family. Even if occasionally they still tell you you're the worst mom ever. See you next week.